Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my author's answer video for August 2019. The author's answer series was started by J.D. Archer and his writing group. I believe all of the questions are listed on his website. He's also done a fair few of them on his AuthorTube page, so I will link to that playlist down below, as well as my own AuthorTube playlist. I answer one of these questions per month. And I'm up to question number 29. Question number 29 is, how do adult authors write children and teen characters so well? And my first response to that is, do adult authors write children and teen characters so well? I mean, maybe notwithstanding the teen stuff, and especially bringing YA into the mix. But in terms of the younger kids, the ones that I think are more alien than teens are. I mean, teens have their own set of problems and drama, but I think in a lot of ways they're much more similar to adults. I mean, maybe I'm speaking from the point of view of having a niece and a nephew who are very young. My nephew's about 15 months old, and he's starting to mimic words now. And so it's like a new era of communication with him. Beforehand, you know, we'd be using actually a little bit of sign language and gesturing and of course crying and babbling, and now we're starting to get into words. So, you know, it just feels so much like alien contact. Maybe it's reminding me a bit of the Ted Chiang story or Arrival, the movie based off of it. But anyway, when I think of adults writing kids, especially in, I guess, the milieu of adult fiction, I tend to think of props, basically. That's how kids are used. Like with babies, you know, if a character's holding a baby, the author has the baby cry, and it's always like an excuse to break up the action, and it feels more like, you know, an external reason for crying. Or there'll be long stretches of the baby not interacting at all, rather than, in my experience, what it seems to be is, you know, the baby makes it all about himself or herself. But then again, I'm not sure I'm thinking of any concrete examples. That's just the impression I have in my head of what I've read, that for the most part in adult fiction, children are props. Maybe one huge exception would be To the End of the Land by David Grossman. I really felt like in that story, the kids in their lives felt like they were portraying real people, although the two sons were older teenagers for most of the backstory, and in the present they were young adults. But anyway, I think in a lot of cases in adult fiction where adults are the center of the story and kids really are secondary to tertiary characters, you can kind of get away with treating them like props because you're coming to the story for the character development of the adults, so, you know, okay, that's all right. But if you want to make a child or a baby the more of the center of the story, or deal with them as characters in a more complex, realistic way, there are ways to do that. This is reminding me of the issue of if authors and writers are sort of touched by the muse. Is that the only way you can write good child and baby characters? And the answer to that, of course, is no. You can employ a much more rote trick that we should employ across the board, which is research. JD is a parent, as he talked about in his video. I think he even had a segment with his kid. So he talked, of course, about basically primary research, being able to observe on the ground what it's like to live with young humans. And as an aunt myself, I've also been fortunate to have that experience. So speaking from the point of view of someone who doesn't live with children, you could still seek out family and friends who have such children and get that primary experience. It's a great way to go about learning how kids and babies interact with the world. It's also a great way, if you come to sit with a kid, to allow the parents to, you know, do some chores or some napping while you take on a little bit of that caregiving. But I would suggest, if you don't really know the children that well, kids can often be relatively shy or different with people they don't know that well. So it would maybe behoove you to watch them with friends and family who, you know, they interact with on a regular basis to see how their normal lives would be. If you don't have some sort of immediate access to the kids of the age group you're looking for, rather than stalking kids at a playground, which is generally frowned upon, you can do some secondary research. My first thought, of course, is you could check out some really dusty, thickly written psychology books, but there are actually more readable texts out there. For example, a mommy friend of mine on GoodReads was recently adding a bunch of these books of child development that were geared toward parents. And of course, most parents don't have, thick academia backgrounds or a lot of time, so the books that are marketed to them have to be more approachable. So you can simply find the one that's of the right age group and look for those, and I will link some of the ones that she put on her GoodReads down below. A second option you have is to stalk some writers who are parents or caregivers as well. What I mean by stalk is that many writers write columns about what it is to be a parent of young humans. And in today's day and age, there's plenty of online websites where, freelancers are able to submit that sort of work. And what do you know, just today I ran across such an article in McSweeney's. And it was about the sort of improv skills it takes to play act with a toddler and the sort of world building that they demand in their sort of imaginative play. I have a 5-year-old niece myself, and I had a visceral sense of missing her just by reading this article about how kids start to interact with you in playtime, starting as a toddler. It was hilarious and nostalgic at the same time, and I'll link that one down below. So that about covers it for me now. I hope that gives you a starting point for how to research writing believable children and even baby characters. I'm really grateful for this question, because on its surface it seemed like all I'd have to do is say yes or no that authors can write kids well, but really there's such a deeper reservoir of things to say, I think, as is the case when you discuss research options for anything in writing. So I hope we get more questions like this in the Author's Answer series. We'll have to see. This has been a fun process and I'm intending to continue it. But in the meantime, thanks so much for watching, everyone. Keep writing, and I'll talk to you next time.